Hey, everybody. Welcome to episode 11 of the Reptile Rejects podcast with your host, Dominic Cabanou and Michael Gillen.
God, you ruined my
And
name on that one.
damn it, I thought I got it better that time.
Cabanu? The
I
fuck?
don't know. I need to. I haven't had to speak
Caribou,
French
mate.
since grade 11.
It's
Not calling you caribou.
that just sounded horrible.
You've got headphones on, but they're not fucking antlers.
Yeah.
All right, so Carbonneau or in English Carbonneau, but Carbonneau is the way to do it. It was pretty close, though. Keep going.
Cabano, like
Oh
that, or
Jesus,
no?
just give
Ah,
up.
shit.
All right, keep going with your.
Carbonneau.
Okay.
Hey, there you go.
Carbonneau.
Scott's got it. That's pretty good.
Carbon. So it's carbon now.
Not the
Just
now,
say
but
carbon now.
or no carbon. No, it is an O at the
Carbon
end.
no.
EAU is O at the end. But anyway, that's
Oh,
the.
okay.
Keep going
That
with your
makes sense,
introductions.
I was
Welcome,
trying
everyone.
trying too hard with it. Yeah, welcome everybody. Alrighty, what's up with you this week, Dominic? Anything new?
This week, honestly, not that much. Sold a couple more snakes. Room is clean. Lots of feedings. I think I'm down to maybe 3 or 4 babies that are a pain in the ass and not eating, which is pretty good considering I started with about 100 this year. So overall, life is good. Yeah, not much more to report. I guess the only thing I could say is this is probably the last show that I'll air before the Canadian Pet Expo. I think it'll actually come out on during the Pet Expo. So everybody, Canadian
Yeah,
Reptile, it'll
Sunday morning. You can listen
yeah.
to it
So
when you
maybe we
drive
can
into the show.
maybe we release it a day before. Just I don't know. We'll see. But anyway, Canadian Pet Expo, September 13, 14, which has multiple different shows. The pet show, it has the plant show, it has the aquarium show, and it has the Canadian Reptile Breeders Expo, the biggest show in Canada. Take a look. We're giving some tickets away, but by the time you listen to this, they'll already be given away. So except for that, what's new with you, Michael?
Not too much. Just getting stuff ready to be away for a couple weekends in a row here because I'll be down at CRB next weekend. So I fly out Thursday evening and get to Toronto at 7 a.m. in the morning. So I got the red eye.
Nice.
That'll be fun. I get to hang out at the airport till either somebody picks me up or the other guys fly in, but we'll see when they fly in. I got 2 different times for when they may fly in, so I think I might just Uber to the expo, which is about 3 minutes from
I was
the
gonna
airport.
say you can literally see the expo is on the backyard of the airport.
Yeah, I looked at the map and I was like, oh yeah, that is right there.
Might as well walk.
If I can. I probably have the time to do it. Yeah. And
Well,
then
our
after that is
any
the BC.
yeah, go for it. Go for it.
Then I got the BC Reptile Show after that. So that'll be hosted by the BC Reptile Club that I'm a board member of. It's a non-for-profit, so all the show proceeds go straight to the club to help us support other non-for-profits. And this year we finally got into donating to local conservation and local other like non-for-profits like the food bank and women's assistance and whatnot. So yeah, we're trying to put money towards good things as well as saving up some money to fight some legal battles that may be happening soon. There's been a push by an animal rights organization in Vancouver to get rid of traveling reptile exhibitions, i.e., reptile shows and educational programs, as well as introducing a positive list. So this is being presented to the mayors and councillors at a meeting during our reptile expo, and we're not allowed to even have anybody there to represent us. So we are emailing all the mayors and councillors around BC to urge them not to do this, as it's not an issue. And we, ever since our laws were redone in 2009, we haven't had any major problems. There's always going to be rule breakers, but it's not a common occurrence of anything terrible happening. And yeah, if you want to help and want to email people, we can, which you don't have to live in BC as long as you're a reptile keeper. Just reach out to you can just take a look on the BCRC Facebook page or Instagram. there'll be links there. You can also just reach out to the page, and Jalen will get in contact with you and let you know what you can do to help. And yeah, we gotta stay on top of it before it becomes a actual issue that we actually have to hire a lawyer for. So yeah,
Is there any company? So I've heard of Can Herp for like, which is the equivalent of like USARC for Canada. Is there any other company, or because I think Can Herp is still somewhat, or it's inactive. I'm not 100% certain. Is there anybody to help, or
At this point, not really. We have some help. Might get some help from Tony Wigley from Responsible Reptile Keeping. So we'll ask him for some assistance on how we should handle some of it. And then we can probably reach out to USARC and that, but just for some guidance. Obviously, they probably can't do too much actually for us since they are in the US. But yeah, and I guess there is PJAC. I think that's basically like pet stores across Canada and stuff that have their
Industry
own.
Joint Advisory Council is it's an excellent resource
Yeah,
because it comes back into your business modeling, and then as soon as you're explaining to the mayors that you're now going to affect financial implications of businesses because you're making a decision, then it comes under the business law. Now, obviously, different countries and different places, but essentially in Australia, one of those things you can use things like hijack to then take on business side of things, and then your business part will then get into the mayors as well, because you're literally regulating an industry for no reason. I do everything you can to stay away from a bloody positive list, though.
oh yeah,
Positive lists are not a good thing.
yep,
Um, People see it as being, oh, it's not too bad. No, positive lists are a real problem. So yeah, do everything you can
yeah.
to avoid that.
We already have a pretty big restricted list. So, and then we have a restricted list, which is like boas, llamas, carpets, and stuff. If they get over 10 feet, you need a permit. But obviously, that doesn't happen too often, and probably not used too often. On top of, and then we have the like illegal Alien Species Act list that was created in '09 that banned all the venomous and certain rear fangs and constrictors, crocodilians, and obviously other exotic animals like tigers and stuff. So honestly, like it's not like it's something that like it's a misuse of government funding if they were to put it in and try to enforce something, because there's not you're not seeing hundreds of these animals being confiscated every year, and most of these animals that were around back then are already gone. So yeah, it'd be definitely terrible to have, and definitely to stay on top of it.
It's no different to things like keeping birds or keeping fish that they don't have positive lists for them. So that could potentially be an argument for you guys to look at as well.
Oh yeah,
So yeah, multi-string that bow as many arguments as you can to refute what they're saying. The other thing that I would
yeah,
also be doing is running around to as many of the academics as possible. And get a really well worded letter together and get them to sign on to it. So as many of the wildlife department regulators within Canada, as well as the zoos and any of the state government bodies, universities, as many professors, doctors, masters, etc., as you could, to get signed on to say that a positive list is not a good idea. Keeping reptiles and amphibians is a not a threat to the environment, provided that we have these following steps in place, including these prohibited lists that are already sitting in there, and then make a
yep,
statement to say that it's been working since 2009. Why do you want to spend so many thousands of dollars, millions of dollars, whatever it might be, to revamp? And then it suddenly becomes a much harder thing for these animal rights activists to go down that road.
exactly. Yeah, we already also have a native species list of like some things like we can't keep any tree frogs kind of thing, like
Mhm.
anything that was in Hyla in 1982. Same with turtles. So kind of sucks that we can't keep like Indian spotted turtles, and like some of these stuff people kept and didn't realize were illegal because they were described. They've been redescribed since then, and they're definitely not in the genus anymore. But actually, apparently, that's changing, and the government was already going to update that part of the native list like in the next couple of years to basically legalize some of those like Asian species and stuff that obviously don't need to be regulated because they're not actually that closely related to red-eared sliders and whatnot, which we definitely don't need in our waterways that are in our waterways, stuff like that. So yeah.
How do you guys feel about introducing our guests? Because I don't even think for the people not watching on YouTube, they're probably just hearing Mr. Eipper's voice there. So, in case anybody wants to know, our guest this week is Scott Eipper. We just started talking without actually doing an introduction. So we're Scott, really happy to have you on. Thanks for joining us.
Apologies for just jumping in.
Oh no,
Oh no, it's
I
great.
I love it. I just figure at some point we got to introduce you for because not everybody's going to watch it on YouTube, right? For the people listening, we'll probably have Scott Eipper's name on the title of the podcast, so I'm sure people will clue in fast enough.
I'm sure most of these people have listened to your podcast or have listened to many podcasts with you on it, so they'll recognize your voice immediately. But oh yeah, we're definitely glad to have you on.
I can speak underwater with a mouthful of marbles. So, yeah. So one half of Nature for You. Regretfully, we've had a personal issue, and that's why Kai's not here with us. So at some point in time, we've picked that stone over again, and we'll get Ty on. That way you don't get to listen to me bang on about things all the time. So yeah, but yeah. Other than that, g'day guys. How are you finding the foray into podcasting going?
You want to go first?
Well, it's definitely I'll go. I'm the one that has to run this platform a little bit. Although Dominic's definitely helped out a lot with being a really good co-host and getting some pretty good guests on. So it's definitely fun to figure out how to run the streaming platform and how. Oh yeah. Oh yeah, it's definitely fun to figure out the streaming platforms and what do I do if the guest doesn't show up or whatnot? Although we haven't had that issue yet. And then or when people's stuff doesn't upload, that's always a good one. And then you have to worry, and like even Cody Joe last week, I think his cut out and then it didn't upload, and then I had to a couple days later I had to get him to upload it, but it all worked out, so it was good. The only bad one so far was that wasn't bad. I was able to salvage it, and it was good. Although it was the only one we used a lot of pictures in, so that kind of sucked. We lost that out. Was the Bill Hughes episode, which would have been awesome if we got all those pictures of the Russian Bergeri and Sanzini and stuff in there. But that was a great episode. I liked, even though it's the lowest viewed one so far. But I think people will like it in the long run. So yeah, it's definitely been a learning curve because even though I'm young, I'm not a big technology guy. I'm a drywaller, so I'm supposed to be stupid.
Yeah, it's been interesting. It's been fun. Like I've always wanted to do it, but I'm really good at breaking computers or making viruses appear or anything like that. So I was like, I can join you, but I can't do anything. I can press the button mute on and mute off, and that's about it. So it's been fun. I think it's quite an experience. It's cool to be able to speak to all these people you want to speak to, like yourself and other guests. So that's probably the most rewarding part of it. See, to me, the worst show we did, and not because of the guest, because of the sound, was our first guest was Justin Julander, but my mic was terrible. The sound was horrible. And like all I want to do is delete it and ask him to come back on and restart it because I bought myself a mic right after because I'm like, I'm not doing this again. That was terrible. And yeah, but now you can't get that back, right? So, but it's been fun. So, Scott, how about you tell us just maybe a bit of your resume, like who you are, what you've written, because I know you've done books, you're into a podcast. Are you a herper? What do you keep, etc.? Maybe just go a little bit into it, just so for the people that don't know you, maybe that live under a rock and has never been into herpetology before. But like, give us your resume.
Okay, well, it's I've been around that since I was a kid, and so most people go around, and most of us, most of the listeners, and most of you guys as well, would have been out chasing critters when you were a little kid. I just never grew up, and I just kept doing it. Right. I had a couple of wonderful parents that were very supportive of my craziness, I suppose. And then I ended up going to the Victorian Herpetological Society as a 10-year-old kid. And still a member of the VHS today. There's the president, his name was Brian Barnett. He was always supportive of kids and all the rest of it, and sort of paying it forward, I suppose. And now I get to do the same thing. Um, so we've got a business here in Queensland. So I moved away from Victoria in 2005, moved up to Queensland, and we've got a business up here called Nature for You. Now, Nature for You is a multifaceted business. We do wildlife demonstrations. We do training with regards to venomous snakes, and we do herpetological consultancy. So, it could be some field work, it could be some fauna surveys, etc., etc. But as part of the VHS, and then they had a magazine, a journal called Monitor Magazine, and I ended up sort of coming on to that as an editor at one point. So I was an assistant editor on Monitor Magazine, and that's from that I started writing and sharing. And so the dissemination of information is something that I've always enjoyed. I've always enjoyed writing as well, and love taking photos. And so from the writing and taking of photos, I put together some various articles on the husbandry of various bits and pieces, and then moved into doing field trip reports as well. And then in 2010, started working on my first two books. They came out in 2012, so that was a guide to Australian snakes in captivity. So those covering elapids and colubrids. There was pythons done by another guy, and then I also wrote a book on the guide to keeping Australian frogs in captivity as well. So always sort of kept all sorts of bits and pieces, everything from lizards through to crocodilians, frogs, pythons, colubrids, venomous snakes, homelopsids, whole box and dice. As part of my passion, though, I used to love getting out in the field and seeing critters in the wild and taking photos and stuff. And that turned into having the opportunity to do some field work associated with some institutions and some locations. And then we were able to gather some science, and I was really enjoying that too. So then that moved into gathering genetic samples for species descriptions and all sorts of stuff there. So going into the more academic side of herpetology there as well, as a volunteer completely too, by the way. And then that's never stopped. So all of these things all happen as well as me having a normal day job as well. So my wife works in the business full time, whereas I work it at part time, but probably do 60 hours a week plus related to herps. We then have written 3 field guides. So we've got the Field Guide to the Frogs of Australia, or Naturalist Guide to the Frogs of Australia, Naturalist Guide to the Snakes of Australia, Naturalist Guide to the Lizards of Australia, Naturalist Guide to Dangerous Creatures of Australia, and then we did a technical field dive to the Snakes of Australia, which I was the lead author on. So that's a much more scientific publication, covering these species descriptions, the whole box and dice with that. That happened to be released by Princeton University as well. So it's a bit easier to get that in North America as opposed to having to get one sent over from us, or via Amazon or whatever. The other thing that we do as well is that we've got a podcast called Whole-Blooded Contributions. What we wanted to do there with regards to that is try to do a slightly different take on the podcast thing. While it is still an interview style, it was more about the person as opposed to just the herps, and how they have contributed along the lines. Now it could be, we had Adeline Robinson on who was speaking about a heart. We've had Brian Bush on, who's just this absolute amazing herper. Thanks to Ty, he wouldn't get on for anyone else, but he gets on for Ty, so that was good. And then, we've spoken to a whole heap of friends, I suppose. And, as you say before about getting out and seeing and talking to people, this is just an excuse to stalk herbs with somebody. So it's good fun. What else? Oh, and then we've written for Chimera as well, which is over in Germany. They probably do, in my opinion, the best herpetological publications that are out there. So we had an opportunity to redo a Lapid book to a much more. We were truncated a little bit by the publisher initially as to what we wanted to do. Well, with Chimera, that was completely different. I was like, no, do whatever you want. If you want to make it a 500-page book, just make it a 500-page book. 576 pages later, and you know, 1,200 images and 60 graphs and 50 line drawings and all of the bells and whistles that's in that book. We were able to produce this book that is pretty incredible when it comes to venomous snake management in general, as opposed to just the management of elapids. Because it covers how to set up room design. It talks about husbandry. It talks about all those sorts of things. One thing that we spoke about in that book that hasn't been sort of seen in other husbandry publications is we talk about enrichment. We talk about Ferguson zones for snakes, the importance of UV light and things like that, which basically aren't sort of taken to into consideration for a lot of herpetological publications these days, and we're looking to improve that. We are always working on various bits and pieces as well. We just had the third edition of the Naturalist Guide to the Snakes of Australia come out. We've got the third edition of the Frogs of Australia sort of in the works, as well as another publication in the works as well.
Very
I
cool.
think that's all. I think, you know,
That was a
yeah.
lot, actually. That was very cool. There's I'm not even quite sure where to start with all that. How about
At the beginning usually help.
how about so? Do you keep any snakes that are in your private collection, or any other
Yeah,
animals at all? Or are you purely so? You said Nature for You. Is that correct? The name of your company? Yeah.
yeah,
So I
correct.
imagine you have animals for that. Is that what you'd consider your collection, or do you have other animals as well?
Um, so these days we did have a few other bits and pieces, but now we are back just to keeping herps. We've got a bird and a couple of dogs, or house horses, I like to call one of them. I've got a Neapolitan Mastiff that is inside the house, and he's a decent sized dog. Um, and then we've also got a Jack Russell cross pug as well. So um, no doubt that the Jack Russell cross pug is the one that runs the house. That's okay. Um, but yeah, so we keep lizards going as skinks, um, colubrids, pythons, and elapids these days. That's our herb collection. So we're not keeping any of the insect feeding stuff anymore. Um, we sort of made a decision a while back to go away from keeping insect feeding herbs because it's just so much more work if you have that as well. So while we'd still like to keep, things like leaf tail geckos or tree frogs or all these other bits and pieces, we didn't really need to keep them. And so because we wanted to reduce our collection size, because we wanted to do a bit more traveling and a bit more herping, um, we sort of made that decision to sort of back on a few bits and pieces. So now we're focusing in on skinks and elapids, but we've still got some pythons and granids and a few other bits and pieces.
did you keep crocodilians at one point? I thought I remembered you
Mhm.
had at least a
Yeah,
freshie or two at one point.
yeah. I had freshies for 25 years. So it's funny, right? Like someone goes, "Oh, it's really cool to keep a crocodile," until you keep a crocodile, and then after about 6 months, it's keeping a crocodile. It's just like another animal in a box, and frankly, they need a lot of room. Um, they're awesome animals to keep, but they're also animals that take a lot of work as well, right? And so, I've been keeping a lot of animals for a very long time, and after a while, it starts to grate on you. It becomes work as opposed to enjoyment. And so, what we're doing now is we're reducing our numbers to a point where once it gets down to a level that we're happy with, then we'll probably stabilise. But there's a few animals that we just don't need to. We don't need. I suppose. But we don't necessarily want to get rid of them either, so we sort of hold on to them for a
Exactly.
while, and then it's like, well, we won't breed those anymore, or we won't do this, or we won't do that, and so we'll reduce a lot of the stuff that we used to breed as well.
Just
Basically because it's like moving on a lapids to people and finding responsible homes, and it's a pain in the ass. And then, like you're saying before, Dominic, about having to get snakes feeding, you get sick and tired of having to get 200 snakes feeding in a year. You know,
yeah,
we'll leave that with people like Nick Mutton and Ryan Young and guys like that that do it for a living, right? Like,
we should ship
Yeah.
all our trouble feeders directly to them.
yeah, but they don't play with venomous snakes.
Yeah, that
Well, not in captivity anyway. So, it's not their thing. And it's all well and good to be force feeding a heap of carpet python when you're force feeding death adders and taipans and all
yeah.
sorts of other bits and pieces and pain in the ass.
So, just by curiosity, what type of numbers of animals do you have now, and what number are you trying to get down? Because, like, for me, it took me a while to realize that I like to keep about 50 adult snakes or somewhat, and then the babies that always dwindle down. And I figured out that's my magic number where I'm happy and I'm not overwhelmed. What are
Um,
you thinking?
well, we've probably got 70, 80, 100. We've got about 120 adults here.
Yeah,
They vary, whether they be lizards or snakes.
But your babies are
So
probably, I'm assuming, not that high. Like you're
no,
probably having
maybe
50
babies at
babies
the
a year,
moment.
maybe. Okay.
Oh no, if we try to breed, if I'm pairing stuff up, we'll have 3 times that easily in a
Oh
year.
yeah.
But we'll probably pair, like this year. There's like 2 things that I'm probably going to pair, and then we'll have some skinks that are live bearers in pits that will go as well. Um, so we'll probably still put out anywhere between 50 and 100 babies this year, which is a pain in the ass, but it's not nowhere near as a trouble as when you've got 300 adults, and then you've got, you're feeding and cleaning every day. So,
Oh yeah.
and I think we were over in Germany in 22, and seeing the way that the Europeans keep their animals is something that we're probably pushing towards. So we're leaning more towards that now. Um, we're not against rat keeping or anything like that, but um, keeping animals in plastic tubs isn't necessarily the best way forward for a lot of species. Um, it's a way forward. It's a way to do it, and there's no issues with that. Um, but the question I would have is it the very best way you can keep that particular animal? And the answer in a lot of cases is probably no. Um, but it's not to say that it's not a reasonable way to keep them either. So um, you've got to work out that level of what is your happy medium as to keeping numbers versus and keeping those animals healthy and well versus having smaller numbers and being able to keep those animals in a slightly different way. So, the time to keep a rack of animals clean and fed and watered is much shorter than say a rack of enclosures, I suppose.
Yeah, for sure. Although you almost have to do it more often. You have to check them more often because you can't actually necessarily, even if it's a translucent tub, you're still not going to see it all. So you got to open it every day to check on if it's shit in its water bowl or not. And then, you got to take that out right away. And so it's still, although you can definitely keep more and it kind of is easier. It's still work. But yeah, I definitely see where you're coming. That's where I feel like I'm going long term. Like even like the Angolan pythons I just got, that yeah, they could be in a 32 quart tub for the next year, but I'm already thinking after quarantine they're gonna go probably into just straight 4 foot cages because they can be in there for a couple of years until they eventually need 6 foot cages when they get a good size, and they'll hopefully be somewhat okay display animals that don't want to smash their face into the glass because they hate people. But
they'll do fine.
I think that's a part of desensitizing them to an extent to the proper to a better setup than just keeping them in a tub all hidden and then you throw them into something that they're not necessarily used to at an older age, and then they're a little more nervous, I guess is how you could put it.
Yeah, I feel like
Well,
oh, you can go
no,
if you.
go.
Oh, I was just gonna
No, yeah.
say, I used to keep a good amount of tubs and cages and all that, and I found myself not enjoying my animals. Like I wouldn't go down just to look, right? You know how often I'm just in here and I'm looking to see what everything's doing at night or things like that, right? And I enjoyed looking at them. And I've gotten rid of every single tubs except one. The one that I feel is the most important is my babies. Like brand new babies are all in 6 quarts. I've got a big wall of 6 quarts for all the babies, but after that, everything goes out. And then I just got different size cages. Like if you look behind me, all those little tiny squares, they're 2 feet deep and they're only about, I don't know, 10, 12 inches wide, but they're perfect for yearlings and everything keeps going up and up and up. But at least this way I can walk and you can see everything. And for me, I don't need to hold these animals and put it around my neck and watch TV. I'm there just to leave them alone. I take care of them. I enjoy their beauty. I enjoy feeding them. I enjoy looking at their naturalistic behaviors. I enjoy breeding them. And I don't know. I don't get any of that in the tub. And the other place that to me a tub really it works well is quarantine or any animal that's sick or when you have a reason to be that 100% aseptic or is it aseptic? No, septic. No, the other way. Anyway, clean environment. So yeah, anyway, I kind of agree with you, and I've slowly moved towards that. And I don't know, my cages are always changing. I go from having branches to perch to 3D printed things to. I've changed my setup so often, it's ridiculous. I think every 2 years something is completely different in here.
I think sterility is a concern, particularly with things like quarantine and stuff like that, and no issues with having enclosures that meet the requirements for quarantine, of course. And then same thing with juveniles. I think juveniles are easier to monitor when they are small, in small pub style enclosures, right? Um, but that doesn't say that you can't modify your rack systems to incorporate things like UV light, and proper lighting systems and all that as well, right? So you can have mesh tops on your plastic tubs with lids and then have a UV light suspended above them, right? That comes on a timer. So there is ways that you can improve that as well. I think that there's a couple of things to look at. Is that and there was a very interesting study that came out in 2008 by Aracino where they looked at vitamin D3 levels in corn snakes, and they split the clutch of corn snakes in half, and they exposed half of them to UV and the other half not to UV, and then they euthanized them at 18 months of age and looked at bone densities. And the animals that had exposure to UV had significantly greater levels of denseness to their bones in the animals that were exposed to UV light, whereas the animals that weren't. Right? And the only difference between the two, right, dentition was the same, the food was the same, so the diets were the same, everything else was the same, with the exception of exposure to UV light. And so here's these animals that are much healthier with UV light. So the question then becomes, how do you incorporate that into it? Now, most people don't have an issue when people say, oh, I'm going to throw UV light over the top of your lizard, right? You don't hear people bitching and moaning about it. Generally, most people say that you must have UV light over the top of lizards. Well, snakes are just lizards. They're in the same squamata. They're in the same class, order as being squamata. Okay, they're not changing class. They're still squamata. It doesn't matter whether it's a snake or a lizard. And so, at the end of the day, while snakes are generally predators and they do get a lot of their calcium from their food, you can improve their calcium uptake and the way they metabolize it by using UV light in addition to that. So, and nocturnal species get access to UV as well. This is
I,
the other thing. People go, oh, it's nocturnal. They don't come out during the day. Oh, shit. They do come out during the day. They cryptically ask. They are exposed to UV light at all times.
so
So,
I think I'll have to go to the devil's advocate side here and just say, like, often you hear of the problems that lizards have, though, from not having UV, right? I
Mhm.
feel like you don't hear those problems though with snakes. Like I don't have any snakes with metabolic MBD. There, I'm just gonna say it. Sorry, that word sounds too French
Metabolic
to me.
bone disease.
Thank you. So you don't hear of a lot of those issues that do occur with lizards when they're lacking that UV. And don't get me wrong, I'm not against UV for snakes. I think it's definitely a good enrichment. Now, as to whether it is necessary or not, I am on the fence because I've seen, or maybe I've heard of a lot of anecdotal evidence that just seems to not make any difference. It doesn't seem to be detrimental. It doesn't seem to help. The study you say, I don't know which one it is, or I don't think I've ever read it, but I feel like a lot of people just need that concrete proof. They really need to be shown that it is necessary. And I'll be honest, I don't have any UV on any of my cages, but I'd love it if they came out. If UV ever comes out, I don't want a big spotlight. I just want to have the little UV lights, just like the ones, like just a little UV bar that you could put directly in the cage. Anyway, that's what I would like to see. And I know they're doing the UV diodes for LED, but right
Mhm.
now it's unaffordable. I think at one point it will be though.
At one point in time, UV via LED will be something that will happen. Um, they've got the way UV light works and the way the animals regulate UV light is they need other forms of wavelengths of light to assist that to help modulate their exposures. Otherwise, it can cause issue. Um, you have to have the right form of UV over the top of animals for it to work correctly. Now, there is another way that you can look at this: is that UV light and heat is the same thing. Okay, we just see heat as being heat is infrared light. Okay, that's all it is. Okay, so we don't seem to have an issue with providing heat to our reptiles. All right, and we don't seem to have an issue providing a warm side to an enclosure. You don't heat the whole enclosure, right? Same thing with regards to any other form of light. Okay, you don't need to give UV light across the whole enclosure. You only need to provide UV light as a choice that the animals can use. They don't need to be drenched in it all the time. And just like a hot spot inside an enclosure or a heated zone inside the enclosure, the animal will modulate itself within that enclosure. It will move on and off the heat as it requires. And same thing with regards to UV light. So you need to be able to provide a mosaic when you're looking at your lighting system. The same way you provide a mosaic when it comes to heating. So you need to have areas of shade and mid light and all the rest of it. You need to be able to regulate that because if you don't, and you're always exposing them to UV, and the whole enclosure is drenched in UV light, then you are going to have issues with vision and all the rest of it. One thing I would say to you is you say you want to err on the side of caution, you look at devil's advocate of it, is that understand that reptiles don't necessarily see in the same visual spectrum that you and I do. Okay? The reason I say that they see outside of that visual spectrum is that there's markings on both snakes and lizards that only appear in the UV spectrum. Now, animals don't do anything for no reason. Okay? They don't produce pigments that sit within that UV spectrum because there's no benefit to them. There has to be a benefit of some description for them to produce that, right? So some dragons, you see some agamas, they get these chest markings and stuff like that. It's only visible under UV light, and it's a signal to say that that female is already gravid. Okay, so then they don't get harassed by other males, etc., etc. There's different patternings and things like that. So to say that we don't necessarily need UV light because we don't see a benefit to it isn't necessarily the same thing as not having a benefit. Now, I would suggest that Dominic and Michael, we could lock you in a box, right? And we could feed you nothing but the same meal all the time and introduce you to a female once a year. And, you know, when you produce when you produce babies with that female because there's nothing else to do inside that enclosure, did you have a successful life? Were you successfully kept? I think we need to go away from saying that successful keeping is by reproduction of a species as being our level of success.
I think you're
And that's what
missing
a lot of
longevity in there too, right?
yeah, yeah, and that's the issue, right? A lot of people look at uh, as a successful keeping of an animal. Oh well, it breeds. I was able to breed it like that, so yep, happy days.
Yeah.
Is that the best? Is that the best marker that we're going for? The thing that the species has an innate drive to do.
No, I totally agree. It's to me, it's not good enough. Like, it's not because you can breed a species 2 or 3 years later and it dies at year 6 that, to me, that's successful keeping. In my opinion, you should be able to breed it maybe 5, 6, 7, even more times and make it live 20, even 30 years, right? Depending on what animal we're talking about. To me, that's success. So if we put Michael in a box, and I'm going to use that because it's much more fun than putting me in a box, or put Michael in a
Fair enough.
box and it's going to be 10 feet by 10 feet. We're going to have a bed and a desk, and we're going to feed him burgers every day. Introduce a girl once a year. He'll probably live a good while, but at some point, after 20 years, he'll start deteriorating. He might die at the age of 30 because of so many issues, right? So it's kind of like the same
And
idea, right?
instead of giving him UV light, we'll just give him vitamin calcium tablets
There you
to
go.
combat give him vitamin D3 tablets, right, to combat rickets.
Yeah, and the other thing I wanted to say about so animals that eat whole prey, right? I hear this argument very often, right? Isn't the idea that you eat an animal that gets the UV, right? By eating the whole prey, you get the animal that has gathered everything for you. So is that
When was the
a
last?
valid?
When was the last? Actually, when was the last time you heard of a rat or a mouse breeding facility that was outside?
Okay, fair enough. But
I was gonna say that.
I mean, it
The
could.
only the only UV my rodents get is when I'm walking from the rodent building to the snake building when I've knocked them on the head and I'm off to feed them. So I don't think that works.
All right, fair. Good. I can't argue that one.
No, no. And this is the thing, right? I'm not saying this to be a prick. I'm saying this because as you sort of do it for longer periods of time, you start to realise actually, well, maybe this isn't the best thing. We've changed some of the species that we keep these days to have animals that suit being able to be kept outside. Um, so the varanids we keep parentes, right? And parentes here, where we live in Queensland, you can keep them outside, and so they live outside all year round. They're not inside. Um, and you can see the difference in their colours. You can see the difference in the way that they behave. You can see the difference in their vision. Um, you can see the difference in the snakes that we've kept outside versus the animals that we keep inside. So our diamond pythons and stuff like that are all outside. Um, they do much better outside. Their skin's thicker. They're more responsive.
Yeah,
They exhibit.
I,
They
I
exhibit. Sorry. Yeah.
I remember that's the thing that sticks out to me the most about like how what almost doesn't necessarily prove it, although I think it kind of does and shows the benefits of UV and natural lighting is like Eric saying, "Oh yeah, hell, Scott's diamond pythons or imbricata, and they feel like a wild snake almost. Like they just feel
Yes.
they're not soft, they're not kind of gooey or like sometimes like you hold a snake and you can almost hear it's like you can kind
Mm-hmm.
of tell it's calcium just like it's there, but and it's probably fine, but like it's just not 100% of like a
Feels
wild.
soft.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's the difference, right? For us, we've had animals inside versus animals outside. You touch the ones that live outside, and they're like these feel different. And I suppose the other thing too for us is that because we herp a fair bit, and we've been all over Australia, and we've herped all over Australia. We've had the benefit of seeing most of the species that we keep in the wild, right? And so we know what they should be like.
So jealous.
Um, And so being able to have seen these things in the wild and captured, handled, played with, etc., you start to understand to go, all right, well, this is how this animal should be. Now, you need to be careful too with that, right? And not necessarily, Terry Phillip from Dakota, runs reptile gardens in South Dakota there, right? Amazing keeper, really good guy. I've known him for 25 years now, I suppose. When I first got to know him off the old king snake for him. One of the things that he was suggesting is that, you don't turn around and go, right, I've got a prairie rattlesnake. It snows where you get prairie rattlesnakes. In winter, I'm going to throw snow in their enclosure, right? So just because the animal is exposed to it in the middle of winter or in the middle of summer doesn't mean to say you're going to do that, right? You've got to have some common sense around what you're doing. But I think the argument that snakes don't need UV because we don't think they need them, we don't think we need it because we can breed it and all the rest of it, they seem to go okay. Going okay isn't what you want to shoot for, in my opinion. I want to do better than okay.
I 100% agree, but I think if I push the argument slightly different, I think that to bring an animal to its optimal care, optimal fitness, optimal life, I almost feel like often you need to hit many, many different cues. And if we hit enough, eventually the animal starts doing long, living long, breeding long, etc., etc. I feel like we're getting to a point where a lot of this is happening, and then most of people are achieving it without using UV. Now, I agree that I could improve, and I guarantee at some point I will have it because it is my goal to eventually do it. But I just wish that the equipment would catch up to that, right? I look at it as like the end of the 90s when I would keep my snakes. I mean, it was in aquariums with light bulbs bought at the local hardware store, and it was just a heating bulb,
Mm-hmm.
or it was like the pharmacy where you'd go steal. Jeez, I'd steal my parents' back hot pack for the when you'd have back pain, right? And you'd use that as your underpad heater, and right. So we've evolved, and I feel like at some point I know I can improve, and I know that's something that I could definitely do better. I feel like the only thing I can buy right now when I go to the stores are they're either the large like they're not neons but whatever those large tubes are, or the big
Mm-hmm.
bulbs. And I honestly don't think there's an easy way for me to make it work in my cages. I i want to go the LED route, and when it's easily accessible and it's at a price that is accessible, I can guarantee you I will incorporate it in everything.
I think it's got to be proven, right? You
Yeah,
can't just go
definitely.
with a system, right? At the moment, there's LEDs that are available right now, off the shelf in China, of LED lights that go into things that do produce UV, and then when you run a UVB meter on them, you get some incredibly high levels of UV light that are
The
coming out
right
of those.
UV.
But it is the right UV, but it doesn't have that modulation
Yeah.
to it as well, and that's the problem. Without having that modulation, that right UV becomes actually harmful, right? And so that's the
Oh
issue,
yeah.
right? It needs that you can't just use UVB without having UVA, right? And so you need and UVA is a spectra, as is UVB, right? And so you need to have that spectrum that's covered all the way across. And so having one or the other is not good. Um, I'll talk to two things. We spoke about longevity. I'll put a pin in that, and I'll talk about that in a minute because I had a snake die that I've had for a very long time just recently. It's one of the record hold for the species. So we'll talk about that in a second. But I just want to talk one more thing about the UV. So we built a new snake building back 10 years ago. And one of the things that we did is we put windows in the roof, okay, of the facility. So there's four windows in the roof. We call them skylights. They're double glazed light windows that are sit in the roof. And what that does is actually allows the animals to be affected by the moon phases. If you've done much herping or anything like that, you'll know moon phases are pretty important. The lunar cycles are pretty important to reptiles. And there's a big difference between the activity on the new moon, where there's no moon, versus a full moon. So we wanted to sort of do that. But what we found is that we would have animals that would be actively seeking out the parts of the enclosures that were being drenched in natural light, even though the UV was getting filtered out by the glass, right? And so we would have animals that would literally bask away from their heating locations to get in underneath the UV, or where they thought the UV was coming through because the color temperatures fit and sat there with those animals. So the animals certainly seek it out. And some of these animals that were bred in captivity that had never been outside at the time, had never been outside and been exposed to UV light before. And yet they innately were seeking it out as much as possible. And so the other thing that we've found as well is that these animals will go out and literally seek, and they will actively bask under UV. So when you provide UV light for these animals, they are actively basking under the UV at certain times. So having the animals regulate themselves to say, yeah, I'm going to bask under UV light, suggests to me that the animals think that they need it for whatever reason that might be. Okay. Now, these are the same species. Some of these animals are the same species that I'd kept for years that never had exposure to UV light at all. And so that's something to keep into consideration. The other thing I will say as well is that not all of our animals at the moment are over the top, have UV over the top of them right now. All right. But it's something that we're looking to do. Right. It's something that we're taking a step towards. And you can't expect, and I don't think people can expect us to be able to just snap our fingers and go, right, I'm going to do this today and then change everything. The easiest way to do it is to do it in bite-sized pieces. You know, what's the argument? How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. So that would be the suggestion I have. And yeah, I think the technology needs to improve, particularly with LEDs. I'd love to see LED lighting as a way to move forward in that. And I think until such time as that is a way that works well, then we might have some issues. But the other thing too, right, you can do with lighting as well is you can ramp. I think ramping is an important thing as well with regards to lighting. You know, you don't walk outside and the sun is naturally just up. All right, it takes time. There's a period of time where it goes up, and we're seeing that now in fish keeping and coral keeping and stuff like that, where they're using ramping systems in regards to light. And that's making a huge difference to their success in being able to keep some of those things. The aquarium industry is something that is like the expensive cousin to the reptile industry from a point of view. And so what we often see is we'll see the aquarium industry generate products and stuff like that, and then the herp industry will come along and bastardize those and figure out a way that you can use them for their own stuff. And
15
it
years
does
later.
yeah, 100%. 100% it does. And frankly, I think that's what's going to happen. I think we are going to see, you know, they will produce the right sort of diodes that for UV, and then eventually once those diodes are out there, you'll have UVA, UVB, and then a couple of other full sets to supplement some lighting system for herps. So,
Yeah.
Yeah,
I was going to go for it, Mike.
I've seen my own snakes, like my Kentucky pine female, like because I have a window in my reptile room, so the sun will in the morning, even early afternoon, it'll depending if I leave the shade fully open, just because sometimes it just gets too hot in the morning that it's like I need to keep the shades kind of down, but like there's still light coming through, and she'll come to the front of the cage and just kind of sit in the where the light's shining in. Same with even the subox. My subox will do it too. They'll come out, lay right in front of it, get their sun. While like other stuff that I've kept with UV in the past doesn't seem to use it, like the Bairds for some reason never. Like I have used UV with some of my stuff, and I put it on for an hour or two because I was unsure if I wanted. I guess I didn't want to leave it on for the full 8 hours or whatever for their full daylight cycle. But if I thought if I put it on for an hour or two, it's like at the worst it's going to do is it's not going to be used, but best is they still get that at least some sort of cycle of UVB in there with the I think those were the Arcadia ones I was using that I still have in some of them. That some like the black milks they'll use them. Black milks love the because those guys are more of like an ambient snake that if you give them too much heat, well, they'll just hide too. But if you give them a little bit of light and keep them ambient in the 70s, they'll do just fine, and they'll actually use it pretty well.
Yeah. So you were talking about the whole ramping earlier too, and just like upgrading everything slowly. Like if you look behind me, I've got the really cheap garbage Eipper thermostat, and I say cheap garbage because they work great, but for only about a year and a half to 2 years until they just shut down and destroy themselves and stop working. And I've been slowly changing, and I've got about five of those huge stacks full of cages, and three of them are now all on Herp 6, Herp 4, a couple all Herp stats, and they're amazing because you can make the heat go up slowly, ramp down for nighttime, and all that. And I'm slowly changing all that. So my goal has been to do change everything to herp stats, use the ramping, and then eventually, slowly, my next goal would probably be to tackle on lighting. Like I have lighting in every single cages, but they're just LED. But I'd love to have the idea of a ramping light that would be LED, that would be UV, and would only
It,
come on like for a short period of time during the day. I don't think I would do the full 8 hours. I might do only 4 hours, but have a slow ramp and then slow ramp down. That's to me, that's in my head. That's what I would do.
what you could do potentially, right? I'm assuming you're running timers in your room
Yeah, they're
for your
all
lighting.
astronomical timers, so they're the timers that follow sunset, sunrise.
Perfect. So what you could do is you could use if you went out and bought Fluval. Fluval have got a thing called the Terra Sky, and they've also got the Aqua Sky system, which is a lighting program thing, which is fucking nuts. Um, if you got two 4 foot long LED strips from the Aqua Sky series and put them in the center of your room, mounted them up in the ceiling there, you could actually have them come on half an hour before your lights come on inside your room, and then that would actually give you a ramping within the room with regards to your light, and it would also come on at the end of the day too, right? So when your lights are ready to go off, those come on, and then you get that ramping in the room. So you get that ambient light coming through your enclosure windows, which would give those animals a ramp in regards to your lighting system. You don't necessarily have to do it in every cage, right? So we've got Aqua Skies because they were the aquarium ones that came out before the Terra Skies did. So we've got a couple of Aqua Skies in the room. And so what we do Mondays, Wednesdays, Fridays, and Saturdays, we have a thunderstorm in the afternoon that goes for anywhere between 15 and 20 minutes. Um, and then we'll actually increase those thunderstorms when we start to get the thunderstorms start to roll through here where we are in the subtropics. We start to get towards the end of spring, we'll start to get thunderstorms every afternoon. And so what we're doing now is we'll actually do the same thing. And so what we're getting air pressure changes outside that are coming through, and then we're matching that to thunderstorms in the room as well. And so potentially, what you could be looking at doing if you're you know, because I think it's the snowstorms and stuff like that that you get when you're getting a snowstorm or a blizzard coming through. You get that air pressure system change as well. And that's when everyone wants to throw their snakes together in the northern hemisphere on those air pressure changes. Or you could throw a thunderstorm up happening with one of those things at the same time, and so you would get that visual cue of a thunderstorm happening at the same time with your snakes as well. Now, it may not affect all of them, but it might affect one of them,
What do
or
you
it might
mean
affect
by
two of them.
thunderstorm? Like the lights mimic lightning and
Yeah,
such?
they
Do you
flash
make
like
do you
lightning.
make the
Yeah,
noise and
they
the
make
vibration too?
it doesn't make the noise and the vibration, but you can do that with sound if you really wanted to. But
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
no, we
It.
find that it does make a lightning storm. It's incredible.
Oh yeah. I remember
Yeah,
when those came out. I think I worked in a fish store then. Those were
Yeah,
really cool.
yeah,
And
that is.
you can control it from your phone. It's all on the app, so it's super simple.
it's like literally on my phone if I wanted to pull it out, and you can literally change it, and you can change your color temperature as well. It allows you to change your blue, red, green, and white LEDs in the light system, and so you can actually increase the warmth of your light or the coolness of your light or whatever. Now that's really important apparently for when you're doing corals. So
Oh
certain
yeah.
corals respond better to red light versus blue light versus green light. So you can actually reduce your greens or your blues depending on what corals you're working with.
Is it
So
a different brand for the corals? I forget what the. I haven't kept saltwater fish in a while. I forget what
I
the.
think it's I just used Fluval. It was Fluval.
Oh,
So
I
sorry.
think I'm thinking Ecotech or something. But yeah, yeah, yeah.
It
Fluval,
might
and then Fluval is Hagen, right? So that's the same as Exoterra.
correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's pretty
So
crazy.
Terra, I think they did the Terra Sky is what the reptile version,
Yeah,
same sort of thing. But it's linked to an app. You can have it on. You can do a custom sort, and then what you can do is you can actually run 24 hours in 12 minutes, in 2 minutes if you want to actually see your whole lighting cycle. And so you can actually have some lighting come on at night as well, so you can mimic moon phasing and stuff like that as well. So if you wanted to have a full moon versus a new moon versus a quarter, and again, important for corals and stuff like that, if you're trying to make sure that they're spawning at the right time when you're keeping them, um, then same deal with that. So you could actually have a simulated moon phase in your reptile room. These lights,
and that's the blue light, right? That's when it
yeah,
kind of
it's blue
is
light,
that
yeah.
brighter blue. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, but then you can reduce that too, right? So let's say it's got 60 LEDs that run across, right? 60 blue LEDs. On a new moon, they might only have 5 of them that are eliminated during that time. On a full moon, it might have 20 of them eliminated during that time, right? And so it ramps that way. So it's a very, very sophisticated system, and it's all automated, which is great. And you lose power and thing like that. It just when it repowers up, connects back, happy days works again. So
It just
the
shows you
full
how,
system.
yeah, it shows you how much more how much more evolved we could be, right? How much further we could take this. I remember I went to Darwin. I stayed in Darwin for about 10 days, I think, and like you were
Mhm.
saying, every afternoon it's like 32 degrees Celsius, and then it pours for 15, 20 minutes. It pours really hard, then it stops. Sun's right back out and all that. It makes me wonder, like, should I make it pour in my room? Should we be wetting everything down for 15 minutes every single day? And I do none of that, right? I don't do storms here. I don't wet my cages. I don't do any of that. But technically in the wild, they're probably all getting that, like, on a somewhat of a daily basis during the wet season, right? But it's something that we don't mimic and we don't copy. Well, at least I don't. But it makes you realize you could do so much more to try to really bring in those natural cues that they get in the wild.
Yeah, 100%. Oh, so and that's sort of what we're doing is we'll use what's going on outside and then try and sort of bring that inside at times, right? So we don't tend to do the misting side of it anywhere near as much. We'll mist a little bit, particularly in the lead ups. And then we'll also, some snakes do prefer to be misted as well in regards to their water intake. We always have water bowls in their enclosures, but we'll still give them misting as well at various times of the year, depending on the species. So, yeah.
Have you ever?
But we will mist it for animals that breed during those storms. So if we're trying to get, Death Adders are one that, you want them to go, put them in on the fronts, right? And you put them in on those fronts, and then you may mist beforehand or afterwards, to sort of help with that as well.
So you were talking about barometric pressure earlier. Have So my experience has been that usually you pair the animals a day or so before the storm. And that's what I've always done. And I've noticed that the breeding tends to happen like 12 hours to 24 before the big storm. And then they kind of keep going after. But that's been my experience. I don't know. Like, what do you think actually causes that? What causes the interest in the female and the males? Or I guess it's more the males towards the females. Any idea?
I have
No?
no
All
idea.
right.
I have no idea what the driver is. I suspect it is a bit of a guess, an educated guess, I suppose. Is that a lot of these animals feed on things like amphibians? Okay, amphibians often breed in storms. Okay, so if amphibians are breeding in storms, the things that eat amphibians are also out during those storms. All right. And so when they're out and they come across, opportunistically, they come across a male comes across a female, they're not going to come across them all the time. So they are going to tend to use that opportunity when they get it, I suppose. And that might be one of the reasons why they breed. It might be a completely other reason that we have no idea. But I will say this is that usually when I'm pairing animals around that low pressure system, then I tend to get pretty good results on those low pressure systems.
And
Yeah, I think this last season I tried that with my Bahama boas, although I'm not sure how well that helped her because she didn't pair until I left, I think. But yeah, I think with the Kylobothris, I know that's a way some people have used it. During the wet season, you start spraying them every day, and it kind of gets them into the cycle, and the males start locking up. So yeah, it's really neat to see that stuff for sure.
Still no
Yeah,
Bahama babies, eh?
again,
You didn't hear that?
No,
Still no babies.
no, I think I got it. If she's gonna go, she's probably gonna go in October.
All right,
So
all
I'll
right.
have to. I don't know. I'll see. I'm gonna expect slugs. If there's a baby, I'm gonna like lose my shit, and it's gonna be awesome because like those will be like that'll be the second litter, and because Cody Joe made the litter in 2021, and I was probably the first one in 3 decades in this country since Tom Huff stopped. I assume he had them because I know actually I think he might have even had some like subspecies that aren't even in the hobby anymore of the Bahama boas because there's like 6 or 7 subspecies, and there's only 3 that are still in the U.S. hobby. And then like I only have 1 subspecies. I have 2 of the different lines of it. But yeah, no, like it'll be super cool to see. But yeah, no, the Kylobothris in general are a storm species because I think they're a little temperature dependent too. Because it does looking at the temps in the Bahamas or in the Dominican, like right now it's 85 to 80 degrees every day, but then in the winter it does get down into the high 60s and mid 60s at night. So yeah.
Scott, I'd love
I'm trying
to.
to do a
Oh,
calculation there in your head to work out what 80s and 60s are, or talking Celsius. Um, so
and the
yeah.
funny thing is, we
Anyway,
talk Celsius too, right? But when it comes to the reptile hobby, even though all Canadians talk Celsius, because everything is Americanized, and you talk to Americans for that online, it's like the hobby is like we're a tiny, tiny little portion of people compared to them, right? So you just get used like all my temperatures are in Fahrenheit just because I'm so used to it. But we're Celsius in Canada too. Well, fuck, we're all Celsius worldwide except like 2 or 3 countries, right?
well, I'm not
So
putting.
yeah.
I'll tell you now, mate. I'm not putting Fahrenheit in any of my herp books, in any husbandry books or anything like that. So they can
I get.
figure out how they can figure it out. So
Oh yeah.
bugger it.
I'm
I
okay
can
with that.
translate it in my head. It's like
Yeah, that's
85
it.
is 30. It's
Yeah,
20,
okay.
25 is, was it 25 is like 80, and then 20 is 68.
The problem is it's not like Clinal. It's like it's got this inverse loop on it, and it doesn't quite match. It's bloody weird. But anyway,
No. None of their numbers
Oh
make
yeah.
sense. Like there's no like correlation. It's not like 100 centimeters is 1 meters. There's no like logical explanation to the way they do it. But anyway, I'm not gonna bitch too much about all
Oh
their
yeah.
calculations.
Trades like
well,
I do all my measurements in inches and feet and stuff. On
to be
boarding
fair though,
and,
right?
and framing, it's all in inches and
Uh,
stuff.
Yeah, and look, I'm a gasfitter by trade, right? So we talk in inches as well, right? Inches and it's a half-inch pipe. It's not 15 mil. You
yeah,
know,
that's
even though half-inch pipe is 12 point, it should be 12.5 or 12.7 mil. It's actually 15 millimeters in diameter, which is fucking weird, but they still call it half inch. Um, it, yeah. So anyway, I won't go down that road. They call it half inch, but it's not actually half inch anyway. That's
oh,
Exactly.
so.
it's all about saving money. It's like the
Yeah.
good old 2x4. Everybody knows what a 2x4 is, but it's 1.5 by 3.5. It's not 2x4. It's and it's all because they used to be 2x4, and then they shrank them because they realized they could make more, and people were still
Oh
happy to
yeah.
use them because it still worked. And then they just still call them 2x4 because people think they're getting that. But anyway, long story.
The the
Um,
the best is when the final drawings show that it's a 6-inch wall going into a 6-inch beam to finish, and the it's framed and it's a 5.5-inch stud, and you put 2 half-inch layers of drywall, which does not make it 6 inches.
No, no, it does not.
I,
Somebody
Anyway,
should tell the design team that.
we'll start going off on construction here in a minute and talk about the issues there. But anyway, um, I spoke briefly before about longevity. So we had a I had an olive python pass a week and a half ago now, that I've had since the late 80s. And it was collected as an
Wow.
adult in the late 80s.
Wow. Did it breed for you? Or is
Yeah.
it male or female?
Well, and yeah, it had bred for me. Yeah. So, um, never
So,
kept any of the babies. I bred it years and years and years ago before I came to Queensland.
so
And
you're
I never
estimating
kept
50
any babies.
years?
Yeah, around 50.
Wow.
45's, 45 is absolute conservative. 50 plus is probably more realistic.
Our guest
So,
last
yeah.
week used to have one that definitely got into its 40s too,
Yeah.
because it was originally kept by Henry Purin as his original male whenever he got it. So he
Yeah.
probably got that in the 90s at some point. And then Cody Joe's had it. I think it passed away. I assume it passed away because he hasn't talked about it recently. But I know at least 5 years ago he still had it. And at that point it was early 40s, I want to say.
It comes an
It was
olive as well.
blind. Yeah, it was an olive.
Yeah. So this is sort of what it goes to show, right? Is that if you keep these animals in a reasonable way, these animals live for a really long time, right? I would suggest that most carpet pythons should live to at least 30 years old.
I think you gotta also cool them down, or at least have that period where their metabolism really drops. And animals that you do end up not feeding for, let's say, 4, 5, 6 months of the year, and cool them down and slow down the metabolism, you're lengthening their life by a lot, right? And I think that's one of the big faults that a lot of people do, like especially all the people that are a big fan of like taking a snake, making it more of a captive animal, and domesticating it to the point where it can breed all year round and such, and then they remove the need to cycle, the need to cool, the need to all that. You're also keeping these animals at high metabolism rate. You're shortening their life. I think all that is a big issue in my opinion, because that's not keeping it the way they should be. And there's no way you're getting an animal to go to 30, 40 years keeping it like that. Anyway, that's my opinion, but that's how I see it.
Completely agree. I think that there's a huge metabolic change that goes through a snake when they go through when they start to eat, right? You know, their blood thickens up, their heart muscle increases in size to be able to deal with that thicker blood. All sorts of things that change with these animals when they're feeding. So when they're being constantly fed, it starts to become a real challenge for these animals physiologically. Um, and so that's something that's a bit of a concern too.
Totally agree. So I'm going to say I'm somewhat of a newbie when it comes to venomous keeping. I'd love to get into it. So I've never kept
Mm.
a venomous snake ever. I have worked in a zoo for about 10 years. I'm going to say, limited experience with venomous snakes. Like I've worked with a few rattlesnake species, a lot of rear fangs, and maybe one or two cobras here or there, but it was still pretty limited. Like I would consider myself a very low beginner, and then right now I don't think I've touched a venomous snake in 20 years, so I would not go
Mm.
near it. But I'm very curious. So you said that you guys are big into elapids and all that, and I'd love to know like um, how would you, let's say I wanted to build a room, or you wanted to go into venomous keeping, what would you recommend? What would you like, let's say if you had to give a 10-15 minute course on how to start, where to go, how to build your room and such. I'm very curious. We haven't had anybody that really kept venomous or have talked about it, so I'm quite
Yeah,
curious. So
no,
I'd,
that's
I'd
fine.
love your give us the Venomous 101 by Scott Eipper.
Okay, so the first thing is ask yourself the question as to why you want to do it,
Oh, I don't want to do it, but
right?
I want to hear about it.
So, but but that's the first question, right? So, if the question is because I want to look cool on Instagram or something like that, then that's not venomous keeping's not for you, right? So the way I liken venomous keeping is a bit like keeping fish. Okay. Um, a good venomous keeper is one that doesn't necessarily, they shouldn't be scared of the animals that they're working with or anything like that, but they don't necessarily need to be on hands-on with the animals at all times either. All right. So you need to work out what you're going to do and how you're going to do it. Um, jumping into working with venomous snakes is not something you should do in 5 minutes. It's something that you should plan for and work out how you are going to do it in such a way that is safe for not just yourself, but anyone else who happens to be living at your residence as well. Okay, so that's point number one. Point number two is work out what you want to keep in regards to venomous snakes. There is no point in just getting everything if you're not interested in keeping everything. You need to work out what you actually want to keep, and then there may be some various steps that you want to go down before you go to keep them. So, as an example, if you wanted to work with cobras, all right, or you wanted to work with mambas, or you wanted to work with taipans, or anything like that, keeping American copperheads as a starting point is probably not too conducive in regards to working with mambas. Okay, and so that's a point that you need to sort of take into consideration. Yes, it might teach you how to work with venomous snakes and work out those processes. Those processes in working with venomous snakes could be used with any other snakes in general, right? So one of the best venomous snakes to work with is someone else's, for starters. So find someone else that you can get along with and that you can work with, and then work with their snakes first under supervision. Once you've done that, then get yourself a colubrid or something that is a decent analog for the species that you're wanting to keep, and keep that as a venomous snake for 12 months. Treat it as a venomous snake. Doesn't matter that it's a corn snake or that it's an indigo or that it's a Mexican black king or whatever, or a boa constrictor or something like that. Keep that as a venomous snake. Assume that it is venomous and manage it as a venomous snake, and get yourself into that muscle memory of keeping venomous. When you do start to keep venomous snakes, treat all snakes in the facility as venomous, right? Because what ends up happening is if you start managing all of the enclosures exactly the same way, you don't have these incidents where somebody goes, "Oh yeah, I was in the mindset I was feeding a carpet python, so I just opened it up, reached in, and I forgot that carpet python was actually a tiger snake or whatever," and then you're getting fanged by something. I think that the phrase is "Don't be a fool, use your tool." Um, use tools to manipulate the animals. One of the tenets of working with venomous snakes is that you are to locate the animal in the enclosure before you open the enclosure. Okay, so you don't open an enclosure on an animal you don't know where it is. You should have at least 2 doors always closed when working with venomous snakes. Right, so in every facility you should have 3 doors. Okay, you've got the door into the facility itself, the door into the room that the snakes are being kept in, and then you've got the door on the enclosure or the lid on the tub or whatever it might be. All times, at least 2 of those doors must be closed. Okay, the room itself and the building itself should also be snake-proof. So it shouldn't be the enclosure is just snake-proof. The room is snake-proof, and the building that the room is sitting in is also snake-proof. Okay, so if there is an escape, and frankly, we open enclosures. We are human. We make mistakes. We don't necessarily lock something properly. We have a failure on an enclosure, whatever it is. It means that you've always got that backup. Okay. Have backups on backups. That's one of the other rules that you've got to have with venomous. So, a few years ago, I was working with a taipan. I pulled an inland taipan out of its enclosure. It was 9 o'clock at night in the middle of a thunderstorm, and the power went out. And so here I am, 9 o'clock at night. I've got a taipan holding it by the tail and with a hook in the dark. And it's literally gone lights out, 9 o'clock at night. There's no lighting, there's no nothing. Shit. Push the snake off in front of me, back outside, go get a head torch, come back in, put the head torch on, go in. Safe to say I went to the hardware store the following day and bought emergency lights. Right? So you can always come up with various scenarios, but experience is the teacher that really sort of pulls you in. If you are working with venomous snakes, you should have access to the medical care required for that species. So if that means that you need to stock your own antivenom, then that's what you need to do. Don't get upset that it's going to cost you a shitload of money to stock said antivenom. You can't rely on someone else. All right. Nothing irks me more than when you hear about somebody having to try and hit up a zoo or another centre for their antivenom because they were the responsible ones to look after look after their own staff. And so what ends up happening is that they turn around and they provide that antivenom to that keeper, and then their own staff are now at risk themselves. So what happens to their staff if they get a bite in the 6 months it might take to replenish stocks? You know, in the case at the moment in the US, there's a really serious issue with regards to these tariffs. Okay, all postage, for example, right, has stopped coming out of Australia into USA at the moment. So if you're trying to ship antivenom that is produced for Australian snakes to a species into the US, I don't know how they can do it. Because you literally can't ship from Australia at the moment. So to get a plane from Australia to the US is about 18 hours, best case scenario. So unless there is that antivenom sitting in the US right now for that species, you're in a lot of trouble because they can't replenish their stocks. It's as simple as that. And yeah, basically enjoy it. That's the other part. That's probably the most important part of all of it is actually enjoy working with them. Do it for the right reasons.
I've heard many times people talk about how being a snake keeper prior to working with venomous is probably one of the worst things. Would you agree with that? Like, for example, for me, let's say I've never worked with venomous before. The fact that I've been doing the same thing for 30 freaking, actually even 40 years. Well, no, I'm exaggerating. 35 years of exactly the same thing. I use my hands for everything. Like, I don't use two hooks. I open the cages with my fingers, everything like that, right? In your opinion, is like a virgin keeper a better venomous candidate?
Easier. It's easier to teach good habits, but they're not necessarily better. In some ways, they're worse, right? Because the thing is that you'll pick up on an animal being ill through your experience, right? So I'm sure it doesn't take very long for a decent keeper to understand what a sick snake looks like, right? You may not necessarily know what it is, but as you're walking through your snake room, if you're going through and you're looking at the animals and go, it's coiled up slightly wrong, or it's not sitting the way it should sit. And then that suddenly a little flag goes off in your head, right? And you don't need to be keeping that species for 10 years to know what a sick snake looks like, right? Does that sort of make sense? So, as an example, what's something you've recently got? What's the species you've recently got?
What's the last thing I got in my room? I guess diamond pythons about a year and a half ago.
All right. So if that diamond was sitting in such a way where its head was the coil wasn't nice and tight and the head was hanging down a little bit, is that going to prompt you to look at that diamond python a little bit more closely when you go into the enclosure?
Yeah,
Of
of
course it
course.
is. Right? You didn't learn that from a diamond python. You learnt that from keeping snakes for decades, right? And so it's the same thing when it comes to venomous keepers, right? So you might be able to catch something a little bit earlier in regards to that when you're working with them. So there's certainly a lot of benefits to having experience, but at the same time too, and that's why I was saying before about you treat every snake at the facility as venomous when you are there. It doesn't matter what it is, and you're careful in how you open all of them. Yes, you might take more caution when you know that there's a taipan on the other side of the perspex. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. You treat them all the same.
I feel like if I cleaned my entire room as venomous snakes, I mean, it would take me 4 or 5 times the amount of time. I think it would be like painful. I'd be like, I would never end. It's good advice. I'm just saying, like, and again, I don't want to keep venomous, but I'm still very curious.
Yeah. Oh, look, that's my recommendation.
I like it.
You know, people don't need to follow my recommendations, of course. Everyone's free to do whatever they bloody well like. But at the same time, I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm not perfect when it comes to working with venomous. I've done plenty of times, and had anti-venom required anti-venom, because I've been bitten. So, um, my last really serious bite was back in 2005. Um, so, been 20 years since 20 years since I've had a really bad bite. Uh, touch wood. Um, but I've had, my first bite that required anti-venom was in 1996. And I don't want to repeat that. So it is what it is. Treat the animals with respect, handle them in such a way to minimise the chances of getting a bite, and then prepare for the worst and expect the best. In our case too, right? Like we're careful. We've got it can flood where we are, so we minimise the interactions with the venomous snakes during times where we could have impeded access to medical facilities. Inside of our electrical, inside our fuse box is the first place. If there's a house fire or something like that, the first place the fireys go is to turn the power off. Inside that, we've got a magnetic sign that says venomous snakes on premises with a phone number on it, so that we may not be here in the case of a fire. We need to be responsible not only for us but for the other people that may come to our place. And so there's that. Locks on the facilities, locks on the doors. We have an induction process to come into our facilities where we induct the people in and go, right, this is what you're allowed to do, this is what you're not allowed to do. Okay, so we actually have an induction process. So it is clear before anyone comes into anywhere near any venomous, that's what they have to go through. And you're talking about Eric before, Eric and Keith, and when those guys were over here, same conversation before they walked into the venomous room. We had these discussions about what they could and what they couldn't do, what they were allowed to do, what they weren't allowed to do. And it seems silly that you're telling somebody, don't open an enclosure, don't do this, don't touch this. Well, you tell them because they need to know.
Um, so, next question I want to go down is would be a certain amount of handling. I'm going to use free handling with a caveat here,
Mm-hmm.
but so a lot of people are completely against it. Some people are pro it. My line of questioning will be animals get sick, right? And when I'm treating a 7 foot olive python or diamond python or olive or anything, whatever, if let's say it's got mouth rot or it's got something and I need to go and clean its mouth out, put betadine, clean it out, and I have to do that once a day for 10 days, not a big deal. Worst case, I get a few teeth in my fingers while I'm doing it. I don't really care. Now, when it comes to venomous snakes, it's a completely different story, right? You're putting yourself at risk to treat these animals. Now, do you think it has a benefit to do partial free handling to touch the animal when you need to, or do you think that is detrimental and it should only be used as a last resort? Like, I don't know if you kind of
Well, then
understand.
let's define what free handling is first, right? So, you know, free handling is holding an animal that's unrestrained without the use of tools.
Okay.
Okay, so that's what free handling is for starters. So, um,
Tailing with a hook.
yeah, well, tailing itself isn't free handling either. Holding a snake by the tail and directing that head away from you by using holding the animal off balance, right, in such a way is not free handling either. Okay, tailing, and that's what tailing is. Um, Tailing with a hook and using a hook to restrain the body as well as it's certainly not free handling. That is using a single hook and holding onto the tail to provide manipulation of that animal. Using two hooks is another way that you can use that, and yes, you're not in contact with the tail at that point. Um, Using two hooks on certain species is a way of having a snake on the ground continually, and having to be rehooking and all the rest of it. However, in some species, it's something that you need to be sort of more cognizant of. So as an example with death adders or something like that, I won't put my hands generally on a death adder unless I need to from a medical purposes, right? And as it happened yesterday, um, I had a rough scale death adder yesterday that I was looking at. I walked past, I looked at the enclosure and looked at it and I thought, that's not seeing quite right. opened the enclosure up, and it had an infected fang on it, right? So I was like, right, great. First thing I need to do is pull the snake out, right? I could see the lip was pulled up a little bit, and when the lip was pulled up a little bit, I'm like, okay, there's something going on here with the mouth. Right, hook it out, put it onto a pad, pin the snake, grab it by the head, open up the mouth with a speculum, have a look on the inside. Right, okay, there's some pus there that is sort of congealed up. Okay, get a set of tweezers, pull the pus away. You can clearly see it's a fang that's sitting off sideways. Hop the fang away, um, irrigate it with some saline solution, and then I've put it back into the enclosure. And then it's my job straight after this podcast to go down and have a look at it and see how it's sitting. Put it into an enclosure that's got a paper towel on the base with just a water bowl. Again, so start going through those things, and then if it's blown back up again today, then what I'm going to have to do is obviously take it to the vet and get medication for it. So these are the things that we need to do, right? Yes, you need to be able to put your hands on these animals. You need to be able to use contact methods and need to be able to do that in a safe way when it comes to working with them. You can also use hooks and trap boxes and all the rest of it, tubes, etc. Tubes are a great thing to use. I use tubes for a lot of stuff. And I use tubes again for a lot of pythons as well. So if I'm sexing pythons, then I'll throw the snake into a tube and then I'll sex it that way. Because it's easier than mucking around with trying to hold it by the head and constrain it and make sure that it doesn't move while I'm trying to probe it. So,
Instead of tubes, the way that I found that it's really easy to sex pythons on your own is just pillowcases. You put the animal in the pillowcase, you simply wrap a third of the body, you hold that area. The snake can move in the pillowcase, bite whatever it wants if it's getting pissed off, but it's kind of the same idea as the tube. I find that's the way that I sex everything, because it's just you can hold the tail backwards with the pillowcase in there and then probe it on your own. It works great. It's yeah. So basically,
we use a thing called a U-Pets, which is a bit like that as well. Let me just show you what it looks like.
I'm curious, actually. I don't think I know what that is. I don't.
Yeah, I'll show you one.
Is it that like bag? Okay.
So basically what you can do there, now you can do the same thing where you've got the snake exposed, all right? And so that's basically a plastic tub,
Okay.
taped a bag to it, and then you can use that for bagging. And then if you look on the other page there you go.
Yep.
So you can do exactly the same thing when it comes to sexing there. So you can see here I've got that tail of a tiger snake there that's exposed, allowing me to be able to probe the snake. And instead of it being in a pillowcase, which you could bite through the side of, it's inside a plastic cup. Works exactly the same. Works really, really well.
So going back to the question initially, because I know a lot of people use trapdoors or simply have a cage that can be split in half. Animal goes to the left, we clean the right. Animal goes to the right, we clean the left. You have two water bowls, so basically there's always a certain amount. And a lot of people are very like, I basically never touch my venomous snake, right? I can do everything without ever going there. So do you find that to be the right way of keeping? It's obviously safe, but what happens when you need to, example, fix the mouth of the fang? Like, so that's where I feel like a certain amount of handling is good, and you need to be able to practice that and be comfortable with that, because the day you have to do it, if you never touch your animal, you're kind of like up shit street there. It's not going to go well.
100%. That's exactly why you've got to be able to do it. Yeah, that death adder, the issue I had with the death adder yesterday is exactly the reason why you do need to be able to handle your animals, right? Because I couldn't have put that animal into a tube, right? Because the snake was, we'll go with inches for people. That snake is about 15 inches long, right, from the tip of the nose to the tip of the snout. Those tubes, the tubes that I've got, are all 24 inches long, right? So if I was to put that snake into the tube, right, then I've got 6 inches of snake still inside the tube if I was holding onto the tip of the tail, right? So there's no way that tube would work. for me to be able to put the animal into a tube to be able to inspect the mouth. Okay, so what do? Okay, well, there's a few different options. I could put the animal into a tub, and I know some vets have got tubs set up that they can put a snake into a tub, and then they can put fluorine gas onto that and actually anaesthetize the snake inside the tub. All right. I've heard about people doing that with regards to zoo systems and stuff like that, where they go, "Oh, well, how am I going to to deal with this snake or that snake or whatever?" They literally anaesthetize the animal when they are having to put their own hands on the animal for that sort of purpose. That doesn't work in a private facility that doesn't have a vet, all right, and doesn't have that sort of stuff on hand. So you do need to be able to work with these animals in a safe manner, and the only way to be able to do that safely is to have exposure to it. And the only way to have exposure to it is to do it. It's as simple as that.
And when you pin the head, are you using the arm or the hook? Are you using the U with the elastic band to pin it down, or are you just simply grabbing it behind the head right away? I'm just
I
curious.
use a no. I'll show you that one as well. So I use a disc pinner. All right. So there's a couple of different types of pinners out there.
Sorry about all the beginner questions here, but I'm definitely not a venomous keeper, so this.
No, that's fine. I'm sure I've got a photo of a disc pinner. So you see that disc pinner there? There's a piece of perspex, all right, that's clear, and it's a big round disc, and you put it on the top of a pad. Have the snake sitting down on a pad, and then you pin down from the top with a disc pinner, and then you ease the body out to the side, and then as the head's coming straight back, you can put in a little bit more pressure and pick the snake up by the head that way. And then the same thing when it comes to releasing your grip. This is where people stuff up all the time, as they do this throw type thing. You never do a throw release. That's how to get fang into your finger. You take the animal, you repin the animal, and then you remove your hand away, and then release off the finger, and then put the snake away. Okay. It's something that takes time, and it takes something that takes experience to know how to do properly. But this is where I was saying before, when you work with venomous snakes, the snake that you work with is someone else's first. All right, I'm really lucky too, right? I've got this amazing wife of mine who's an accomplished venomous keeper all by herself, without me having any influence over that. And if I need a second person, I've got a second person here that knows exactly what they're doing. All right, she works with taipans. She works with large mulga snakes. She works with death adders. Half the death adders in the house are hers. I don't particularly like
it
death
doesn't. She takes care of 90% of the collection,
100%, and
right?
she runs the collection, as you say, Michael. She takes
You're
care
the
of it.
second person in the house right now.
I am the second one. Yeah. I just happen to be the one that likes to, get in front of cameras and shit like that. She doesn't like that, and so because she doesn't like that, and also because she's a bloody female, automatically this hobby has this ridiculous misconception that females are not as good as males for some reason, and it's something that we're slowly changing. But misogyny in the hobby is absolutely rampant.
Oh yeah,
I think
especially
it's
on
more
Facebook.
than just a hobby, but yeah.
Yeah, well, that's fair too. But certainly in reptiles, reptiles and amphibian keeping, the amount of female keepers that are written off because they're a female is absolute bullshit.
Yeah.
When
Or
I would
just the
suggest that,
assumptions.
oh yeah,
Right.
you're a female, you work with geckos or this or that or the other. No, that's not the
Oh,
case.
you want to you post something about, oh my, why should we make fun of people keeping their animals in uh bigger cages and stuff, and then you get big name guys posting that, oh, you're probably a hippie or whatever, or you think everything is super smart and whatnot. And then it's like, well, why did you choose the only female who commented on it to spill your opinion on, instead of one of the males that said the same thing or a similar thing. It's it's not great.
Yeah.
It's a bad look too, to be fair. Right. I got nothing for it. We actually, it's one of the questions we actually ask in our podcast. Is, has people experienced misogyny in the hobby, um, and or have they witnessed it? And then the question I challenge people is that when you witness misogyny or when you witness misogynistic behaviour in the hobby, do you call it out? And the question is most of the time is no, they don't. So then is your silence then condoning it? And the question is most of the time, yes, in reality, if someone's being a misogynistic prick and they're having a go at somebody because of their gender, or they're unfairly dismissing someone because of who they are, and it's not necessarily restricted to gender too. It could be their sexual orientation or their race, or whatever it might be. You know, it doesn't matter who you are. You don't need to be an asshole.
It's just like
Right? Just
back,
be a good human. Just be a good human being. You know.
if you look 30 plus years ago, if you were a reptile keeper, you needed to be riding motorcycles and have face tattoos, right? So,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
changed a lot. Like I think we all got our face tattoos removed. So, uh,
Yeah.
so yeah, it's changed a lot. But when you're talking about your wife, actually, I think Ty was going to be the first woman on our podcast, and I 100% want to add. Do you have the bingo card? Is that what you were going to show,
Yeah. What's
Michael?
this? Yeah. No, show me this. I want to see this.
I don't know if he knows he's muted. Is he talking?
Oh, okay, yeah. I made a Canadian Reptile Breeders Expo one that'll be for select people.
Oh, okay, cool.
Because I saw Smitty's and I was gonna make one for the Calgary show the other week with my buddies, but then I was a little last minute because I like didn't even listen till the next day, and I was like, oh, and then it was just too busy because I had to drive out there on the Thursday morning, and then yeah, but yeah, I
We
think
need to do one for Australia too. Don't worry.
oh yeah,
When I was part of that live stream, and I was jumping in on the chat and shit. And
oh yeah,
yeah, there
that
was a
was
lot of
awesome.
fun being said there for sure.
Can't believe Rob actually went on there. That was hilarious.
You didn't know what to
Of
do
course,
for a
he's
second.
the
You were
lawyer
trying to
gets
catch
on
up.
there.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, like misogyny in the hobby is such a rough thing, and you know, it's it's something that needs to be called out more. And the more it gets called out, the better we're going to see. We're going to see better results out of that. And I think too, right, if people are being targeted due to their gender or their sexual orientation, are those people going to then share the information that they have, or are they going to shut up rather than be persecuted? And so then we're suddenly losing all of this amazing information that these guys have gathered simply because we can't see past our own noses.
Yeah, I see your point, and all I got to say is that I think it's pretty incredible that you have a partner that is into the same hobby and passion as you. Like that's got to be something that I don't know. I've had a few girlfriends in my lifetime, and I don't think I've ever had a partner that was actually into even if you want to go down the stereotype, like even just geckos or just like the little the introductory animals, like never. But the fact that you have a wife that is like badass and into venomous keeping and everything, I think that's amazing. It's almost like the dream of any guy that keeps reptile. Like imagine if your girlfriend or your wife is into it like that. Like I just think it's amazing. Like I envy you. Like I wish my wife was like that. But she's
Well,
good in other ways, but she definitely does not give a shit about my animals. It is not hers. It's you keep it downstairs, and I don't want anybody to know there's animals in the house. That's the kind of lifestyle I'm living.
well, I'm certainly punching above my weight. My wife's an amazing person and a fantastic herper in her own right. And, you know, she produced some incredible work as well. Some of the books that she's done and stuff like that. And the fact that she's been doing all this also with this added adversity as well with regards to the misogyny side of things. And then on top of that, then there's this whole other thing where people, because I am, I suppose, a little bit louder and all the rest of it, they come automatically to me, and then they forget that she exists. She exists, and it's like, well, I didn't write the book. I wasn't the primary author on that one. You need to talk to her. But that's what it is. So, yeah. Anyway,
Uh, Mike, you want to go into herping a little bit, or is there a different subject you wanted
Or
to add or jump into?
well, keeping the venomous stuff because we're on that topic still, or maybe we should leave this for when Ty comes on. I was
Oh,
wondering about like just what's the general keeping for like taipans and death adders and stuff. I was just curious. Like I don't think I've ever even heard anybody talk about just like general care and like maybe it is just similar to keeping other stuff, but it was just be interesting to
um,
hear how people keep them in general.
yeah, temperature wise, humidity wise, fairly similar to say carpet pythons or anything like that. Obviously, enclosures are a little bit different in how you work with them. Um, as an example, for the juveniles, where we put the air holes on the tub is a consideration compared to the clips on the tubs themselves, right? So you don't want to have any air holes where when you go to open a tub, the air holes are going to come in contact with your knuckles, or your thumbs or anything like that as you open a latch, right? So even little things like that, you're cognizant of. Um, when it comes to opening the enclosures and working with the animals themselves, feeding the animals themselves, it's all pretty much the same. Whether you're keeping a, a taipan or a death adder or a tiger snake or a carpet python, it's all essentially the same in regards to the basic husbandry of them. What changes is um, either the temperatures that you work with those animals. So, yeah. And feeding rates and stuff like that. Obviously, elapids have got a different metabolic rate to what pythons do, and so death adders are closer to pythons than elapid, which are much more like colubrids, right? So your rate of feeding is a lot more is a lot higher in those fast-bodied species.
Except for some subspecies or localities like the Ingrams. Like I remember Matt Somerville posting
Yeah,
that
yeah,
one picture, and that was super fascinating. Just to realize, like you can feed it like I don't know 4 mites a year, and it still gets obese. That's insane.
yeah, yeah. So Ingrams are a slightly different animal. They're a bit like a Gila monster or something like that. They do not need to eat very frequently at all, and so they've got this incredibly slow metabolism. Um, and yeah, so there is exceptions to the rule, I suppose. But yeah, for the most part, most of our stuff they've got a higher metabolic rate than say most pythons do.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, the Death Adders are fascinating too because they make you think they're a viper, but obviously they're not. Were they ever at some point like some taxonomists like 200 years ago classified them as a viper at all, or I haven't looked
Um,
into their taxonomy at all.
so boa, it was actually described as a boa. So Antarctica is called Boa Antarctica. It was when it was first described by Shaw in 1788 was the first death adder described.
why
Um,
Antarctica?
Antarctica means south,
Oh, okay.
so southern boa. So that's how so Antarctica is southern, and so it was southern boa. So that's what the
Wow.
name meant. So they were originally described as a boa. Pseudechus porphyriacus, the red-bellied black snake, that was described in the genus Coluber. Right, so that was thought to be a colubrid when it was first described. Right, so yeah, so that was the two pretty enigmatic Australian snakes. One was described as the colubrid, and the other one was described as the boa. Um, so yeah. Um,
Wow, that is pretty cool.
yeah.
Awesome.
Cool.
What you spoke about earlier, what I kind of thought we could hit on maybe, because like you talked about how when you first started writing books back in
Mhm.
2010, you wrote a book on frogs. So like what? So were you like a big frog guy back in the day? Big into
Yeah.
amphibians and stuff?
Yeah, I had shitloads of so I used to have. So you were talking before about positive lists and stuff like that. Where I came from, Victoria, you had a positive list of what you could keep, and then there was like 15 species of frog on it. There was 30 species of snake, um, and then probably about 80 species of lizard or so. And so I'd worked with a heap of species of frogs, um, and so that guide to series that came out, there was going to be one on skinks, geckos, monitors, agamids, frogs, turtles, pythons, elapids, and colubrids. Right, so there was going to be the 8 books in the series, and so it was like, well, there was one guy who was going to do Danny Brown and was going to write all the lizard ones, and then they'd spoken to a couple of people about who would be willing to do the other ones, and so myself and another guy, Adam Elliott, were asked to do the other four, sorry. And, we said, well, Adam used to work with a lot of turtles. I used to work with a lot of frogs. Um, and so as a result, it was like, right, okay, well, I'm going to do the elapids and the frogs and the colubrids. And mind you, I kept just as many species of pythons and stuff like that back then as well. Um, and then, but Adam had worked with a lot of turtles as well, so he ended up doing the turtles and the pythons, and I did the snakes and the frogs. So that's how we got onto that. But yeah, worked with a lot of species of frogs over the years, mainly tree frogs and limited anastids, and myobatrachids, which are Australian families of frogs. So limnastids and myobatrachidae are our ground frogs and sort of our analogues for toads, because there's no toads here that are native to Australia.
Are
And
those
then we
like
don't.
those burrowing toads that almost look like that? Those I feel like
And you think you
there
noted
there
them,
was
the holy cross
probably,
frogs, holy
yeah, I
cross
think so.
frogs, yeah, crucifix frogs.
Yeah.
So yeah, those sorts of species, and then the barred frogs, um, marsh frogs, and then things like green tree frogs, which you guys know as white tree frogs, red-eyed tree frogs, but a different form of red-eyed tree frog. It's an Australian version. Um, parents tree frogs, all these various species over here, and we were still keeping frogs and stuff like that until we sort of got rid of all our insect feeding stuff about 3 years ago. So,
Wow, that's pretty cool. I don't think I ever do that about you. That's pretty awesome. Like I don't even keep frogs myself, but I still find them super cool, super neat. Like I think if we were allowed to keep them in this province, which hopefully will be legally soon, uh, white tree frogs and stuff like that would be super cool to keep. Just like I obviously like even PetSmarts and stuff still occasionally get them in. I remember seeing green tree frogs all the time as a kid, like the North American green tree frogs, and obviously they finally cracked down on that, even though they've technically been outlawed since 1982. It's the
well, they're
frog
in the
keeping is
family
super interesting.
Pelodroidae. All the Australian ones are in the family Pelodroidae as well. They're not hylids.
Yeah, but I think back then they were something
They
back
would have
way
been
back in the
back in
day,
the 80s. They would have been, yeah.
which is what the law bases off of, which is silly, obviously, and some people still keep them, but they technically shouldn't. So hopefully that changes because they're super neat frogs, and they're honestly like, as I think
Well,
I
I
remember
think that
the
you
or
set
no, you
up the
go.
enclosures right. You set up the enclosures right, and you can actually have multiple species sitting within an enclosure as well.
Oh
You
yeah,
can have often you can have skinks, and you can have fish and tree frogs all in the same enclosure at the same time, which makes for a pretty interesting looking enclosure. So,
oh yeah. I remember seeing that's when I was probably like 7 or 8 going to PetSmart, and they would have this big display, and it would have like both anoles in it, the
hmm,
Chinese long-tailed grass lizards, and then it would have green tree frogs and have everything in this one setup, which was so cool to see, and house geckos too.
yeah.
Would have them all in the same thing. And that was super fascinating as like a 8-year-old to see, even though people don't do that as much now. Obviously, herp keeping's changing, and we're figuring out we can cohabitate certain species and whatnot. But back then, before it was like a no-no, and then now it's slowly coming back in. It's definitely neat to see.
We cohabitate quite a few species. Yeah. And then what we'll also do is we might have male Cunningham skink or something like that, which two males together will fight. We'll shift one of the males into an enclosure that's got blue tongue lizards in it or something like that, right? And they're perfectly fine. And so what it ends up meaning is it means that Cunningham skink that was getting picked on or that was fighting isn't getting fought with anymore because it's, the other blue tongues don't see that as a threat. So he doesn't see the blue tongues as a threat. So it's just another lizard that operates in the same ecological niche, I suppose, as the other one. So there's no impact from an animal in the animal from a behavioural point of view, and the keeping style is suitable, but we don't have the issues where the animals are getting stressed due to interspecific combat.
Wow, that's pretty cool. I would have thought that the blue tongues would have kicked the shit out of it.
Oh, I think it's fucking nasty. They want to
Yeah,
taste it.
I think I've remember some people talking about getting nailed by them. Yeah, no, that's super neat.
No, mate,
Awesome.
So, living in Australia, though, like you guys are restricted to only Australian animals, right? Is that correct?
yeah,
Yeah.
correct. With the exception of axolotls.
Oh, really?
Northern white lips.
Yeah, let's not
Albert side.
start about that. Albertisi that are in captivity here, and Morelia Zero that's here as well. And
And
I shake my head when I look at the Albertisi that are kicking around. They should be Fred. There's an argument to suggest that you could have Fred Parkeri, which people for some reason are still calling Meridionalis. But, Meridionalis is a junior synonym of Fred Parkeri. Fred Parkeri was described before Meridionalis in that same paper, and so as a result, it should be that's the available name. So Meridionalis comes after that in the paper. So you've got to take the first principle of priority. It would be Meridionalis, which was described after Fred Parkeri, so therefore the name should be Fred Parkeri, not Meridionalis. Anyway, I digress. Essentially, in private hands, you can't keep any exotics other than axolotls. We're a slightly different boat ourselves personally because we have a demonstrators permit. The demonstrators permit does allow us to keep what they call is Category C species, and the Category C species include some very select species of exotic reptiles and amphibians if we go to choose to keep them. So we still have to apply to keep them and present our species management plan and all the rest of how we would work with those. But, we can keep some tortoises and dendrobatids and a few other bits and pieces if we went down that line. I can think of nothing worse, to be honest.
does that mean that, like, if animals got confiscated, like for example, people keeping corn snakes or keeping a red-tailed boa, would you be a candidate for taking it? They would euthanize anything they find.
Anything that's being kept like that is getting euthanized straight away.
Yeah. Okay. No, I was
Because
just.
it's classed as a biosecurity risk. Whether it is or it isn't, it's another argument, I suppose. But I'd rather err on the side of caution, I think, with the authorities in that regard. And there's a suggestion that the animals were have been illegally imported, and they want to take that line. Then I can certainly understand why they're getting euthanized at that point. Corn snakes are an interesting one because they're probably, they're more or less established these days in the wild here, unfortunately, in a few locations in New South Wales now. So, much like Asian house geckos, Hemidactylus crenatus, and cane toads, these are species now that do occur in the wild here. We've got red ear sliders as well in a few locations, but they're in very, very low numbers. And so again, they're classed as noxious. So if you're caught keeping them, then you're in all sorts of trouble. And the other thing that we have here as well is a population of smooth newts, Lysotriton vulgaris. So there's a population of those down in Melbourne. So,
Oh wow!
yeah,
Can you imagine?
that's our only caught eight.
I was like, can you imagine traveling all over to Australia? You're going there to see just the beautiful Australian animals, and the only thing you find is a corn snake.
Yeah.
It'd be just so disappointing.
I mean,
Albino
like,
corn snake.
Yeah, an albino corn snake too.
like if you went to Florida.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh look, here's an agama, here's a Burmese python, here's a rainbow boa, here's a Cuban anole. I
I,
never
And a
saw any
panther,
Florida
and a
snakes.
panther chameleon.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I
it
feel.
won't be long, and bearded dragons will establish themselves there, I would say.
Oh, probably. I feel like the
Oh
only
well.
problems we have really here is like red-eared sliders. Except for that, it's too cold. Nothing lives here
Yeah.
because of the
And
winters. It
they don't
kills everything.
reproduce.
Yeah.
They just kind of exist. Like you like we'll see one or two in a pond somewhere, but they don't exist. They don't actually reproduce. You never like, there's definitely populations of painted turtles still out here. The western painted turtles, the Fraser Valley population is kind of like I believe it's technically endangered or at risk at
That's
this point. So
native
they
though.
are doing yes, they are
Yeah.
native, but they're doing reintroduction programs with the local zoo to try to keep those numbers up in certain ponds, just as a backup plan. Because obviously, like Lower Mainland's a very like Vancouver, the Greater Vancouver area is a very popular place to move. So the urbanization of it is happening fairly quickly. So we gotta try to keep the populations as stable as possible, even if they don't necessarily want it in the long term.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're already 2 hours in. There's a lot of subjects I would have wanted to covered. Obviously, I would have loved to talk about tons of pythons with you, but I think we're gonna skip that all together and maybe do it another show because we talk pythons a lot. Um, Maybe if we could talk just real quickly about herping because you're in a location like for me or many others like Australia is like the dream place to go herping, right? I've only been to Australia once, and I actually didn't go there for herping. I went there for to go diving, and loved my experience. Visited a lot, but I saw a few snakes, maybe two or three, but a couple of crocodiles. But I didn't do much for herping. So, if somebody came, what would you suggest as preparing a trip or preparing a herping trip, or one or two locations that you'd say you need to go there? Because Australia is a
Um,
gigantic place, right? So,
Big place. It is a big place. I suppose the first question you need to ask is, what do you want to see? And once you know what you want to see, then you can take the best way forward on it, right? But probably, I think the best place for all herps, right, with the exception of crocodilians, is southeast Queensland, right? Where I live, I think is probably the best spot to find herps, um, as a as a we've got a lot of iconic species here, and in a relatively short drive, you've got five really significant different habitat types. So we have rainforest where we are. You have the Brigalow Belt, which is a few hours away. 3 hours in the car and you're in the Brigalow. Um, 2 hours in the car, you're in the New England tablelands, which is a whole heap of sort of really rocky granite boulders, hills made out of granite boulders. You've got rainforests, you've got Wallum swamps. So you've got all these different locations where all these different sets of species live. And as a result, you've got this huge diversity. It also happens to be in an area that has got a really good road system and relatively easy to get around and all the rest of it to see good things. Um, you can go a little bit further south. It's right on the edge of a biozone, I suppose, too, where not only do you have different habitats, but then you've also got these different groups of species that use those different habitat types as well. So you've got these. It's a place where you get this northern and southern species sort of mixing together in the same location. So that's pretty cool. So you can see things like shingleback lizards, carpet pythons, um, leaf-tailed geckos, red-bellied black snakes, brown snakes, tiger snakes, death adders, taipans. Um, all of that stuff can be found within sort of 3 hours of Brisbane. So it's a pretty good spot. Um, and then you've got all the small stuff as well. So things like golden tail geckos, Gropurus williamsi, the eastern spiny tail geckos, thick tail geckos. There's a half a dozen species of pygopod in the region. You've got sea turtles and nesting beaches with sea turtles. You've got sea snakes that turn up. A little bit further north, and you can see a whole heap of other stuff. Then, if you wanted to see a whole heap of other things, you could get a short flight, a 2-hour flight from Brisbane to Cairns, and then go chasing things like crocodiles and stuff like that. You've got the Great Barrier Reef right there as well. All right. So Great Barrier Reef, amazing for diving, but then also really good for things like sea snakes and sea turtles and stuff like that as well. So, crocodile cruises, so you can go and see saltwater crocodiles on the cruises and stuff like that. Really good herping around Cairns as well. Again, fairly easy to get around, see things too. So that would be my recommendation. But if you were really into Darwin carpet pythons or something like that, jumping on a plane and flying to Darwin and seeing the stuff in the Northern Territory is great too. You can go to Central Australia as well. Alice Springs, a whole heap of different stuff there. South Australia's got its own stuff. WA's got its own stuff. Victoria's got its own stuff. Sydney's got its own stuff. So there's a lot of places that really need to sort of determine what you want to go and see. And then once you know what you want to go see, then you can work out what time of year you want to be there.
Yeah, I've only done Cairns and Darwin, and it's funny, when I went to Cairns, didn't see a crocodile, but in Darwin we saw a lot. Like we did go on the Adelaide River too, so it was pretty easy to spot them there. It was pretty cool.
The
And
jumping croc cruise.
yeah, I did. They were, I don't know which one it is, and I know we were the typical tourist, but I mean, how can you not go on a boat and see the big saltwater crocs jump out of the water, right? Like we had to do it. It felt like the right thing.
Amazing.
Yeah, it was incredible.
I did it. I've done it when I went there. When I went there, I've done it. Been on the jumping rock cruise. It's an incredible thing to see.
Yeah, it was
You know,
really cool.
what I also love is how you've got like this little high. You don't have any high barriers around you or anything like that, and there's a crocodile that's leaping 5 feet out of the water, and the side of the boat's only 2 foot off the edge of the boat, off the edge of the water, so it's a bit different. But
Yeah, it's screaming
the
safety,
crocs need
right?
to jump in the right spot. What's that?
I said it's screaming safety.
Yeah, yeah. You don't put your hands over the side, that's for sure.
What I loved is when you would go like in the jungles or in Darwin or whatever those big provincial parks are, and then you'd get to like these gigantic or these lakes or ponds or whatever you'd call them, and you'd have all the signs saying that there's freshwater crocodiles and all that, but then you'd have people telling you it's okay, we've taken them out, they're all out of there, there's no more in there. I don't know, and then you're like, okay, are we at the end of the season or the start of the season? Because I don't want to be the first ones to go swimming. And everybody's swimming in them, and I'm like, I don't know how much I believe that they've actually emptied all the crocodiles out of the ponds.
No, they haven't.
That's what I figured.
They haven't. They've got these things called legs that they can move too.
Yeah,
They'll walk down over line. And you don't want to be the one to find the saltwater crocodile. It's nothing to be sitting in that pool.
people people swim in them, man. I don't know.
Yeah, but people cross roads too, and they smoke cigarettes and they drink alcohol and they jump out of planes and people do all sorts of stuff that can kill them, and they're still here. So, I'm not saying that you don't take risks. I'm just saying that sometimes be cautious with what you take and all the rest of it. I'm not going to go swimming in places that I think there might be crocodiles. That's for sure, though, regardless of what the locals are doing.
Yeah, that's a good sense of advice.
Fair enough. Michael, is there anything else?
I've been hunted by crocodiles out when I've been out herping for mangrove snakes and stuff like that. And
did you say you have been hunted?
100%.
All right, I need to hear that story.
Was that on your Indonesian trip?
No, that was a trip in North Queensland. So I was on the western side of Cape York. I was walking through the mangroves at night looking for mud snakes, and these things live on the edge of the water in the mangroves. And saltwater crocodiles use exactly the same sort of habitat. And so I used a technique called eye shining. So you got a head torch on, and the head torch is sort of sitting there, and you look out into the water and you see these two big ruby red eyes, and you're like, well, that's a saltwater crocodile. Pretty clear, it's a salty. And I'm sort of walking along the bank, and it's walking along the bank, and I look up, and then it'd just drop in underneath the water, and the water's got the consistency of like milky coffee, right? So you're not really seeing through the water or anything like that. And as I'm sort of making way along these mangrove edges, looking for these mangrove snakes, I get to another break. I look up, and now this crocodile, instead of being 50 meters out, it's now 20 meters out. And then I keep going along another 10 meters, and then it's 5 meters out off the bank. So this crocodile's making a V line towards where I'm walking to. And so it gets to in front of me about probably 10 meters in front. I see the crocodile drop down. And then there's this stand where there's no mangroves. It's like a little outflow from another creek. And so there's no mangroves in that spot. It's like this perfect ambush position, right? So I'm looking at it going, there is no way I'm being sort of 3 feet off the water's edge here. Where I was, there was like mangrove roots and shit like that, so the crocodile couldn't really get to me where I was. Um, so at that point in time, what I ended up doing is I ended up moving like 10 meters away from the water's edge, and sort of ended up. I saw the crocodile, I saw it drop its head down, and it was only 2 meters off the bank at that point. And I got a big stick, and I threw a big stick towards the water, and there was this huge splash and all the rest of it. And then didn't see the crocodile for that night after the rest of it. So I guarantee you, if I kept walking where I was walking along, that crocodile would have come out at me at that time.
It's just crazy.
Wow.
So, it's a humbling experience to be hunted by another animal.
There you go. Do you ever have any of the fears of when you're walking on land, though? Because a lot of crocs are outside of the water, too, sometimes, right? Especially at night.
You'll see the slides and stuff like that from them.
Yeah.
So you're sort of careful how you're walking and where you're walking and all the rest of it. You take that into consideration. But yeah, your head's on a swivel, that's for sure. Yeah, it's a lot
Wow.
harder for a crocodile to grab you on land than it is in the water too. It's not to say that they can't do it, but it's a lot harder.
Fair enough.
What herping trips are you planning to go on this year? I saw you had a post about that you're planning a bunch of them. What are some of the
Yeah,
trips you got scheduled?
I've got a few things I'd like to knock over. So there's a geckos, a couple of geckos I want to go and see, and some skinks I want to go and see, some frogs I want to see. So yeah, so some local, some a little bit further afield, I suppose, but all in Australia at this stage. So love to get back to Indonesia and all the rest of it. Love to get back to Europe and do some stuff. Hopefully we'll get to Europe next year. That's the plan. So yeah.
Yeah,
So
Europe's biodiversity is like insane with the vipera. I didn't. It's until Nipper started talking about it, and I think even you started talking about it. Like it's like, wow, there's a lot of species to hit that you could hit in Europe by just going in the mountains and different
yeah.
subspecies of Vipera and stuff like that, and then all the other colubrids and caudats and frogs and stuff there.
I was super excited to see newts in the wild and an adder in the wild. I was so excited to see both of those. Um, the newts. I found a newt in it's a forest, I suppose, and I happened to be with somebody who's like, "Oh, really? You're excited about seeing that?" My garden, and then literally goes to their garden, turned over one rock, and then underneath one rock, there's like 6 alpine newts underneath the one rock. And I was really excited about getting this one that was 20 millimeters long. Um, so, yeah, so it's like herping here, I suppose. People get excited by seeing stuff that's local to me that I don't get that excited over. So, same thing. But finding an adder was amazing.
I feel like you still get excited seeing any animals, even the local animals you get around here. Like here, if I see a skunk, if I see a fox, anything like that, which are just like, or even just your typical common garter snakes, like I'm happy, I'm excited. Like to me, it's cool. It's like it's not something you see every single day. You might see them often enough, but I don't know. To me, it's still cool. But you always prefer seeing other people's animals, right? Like to me, going to
100%.
Australia, I want to see everything from the wallabies to, and I've seen a lot of them, but I just want to go back and see more. Doesn't matter if it's a reptile or
Well,
not.
we came over and when we were there, we were in Frankfurt, and we went from Frankfurt to Harm and went to the Harm Reptile Expo, which was incredible. And on the way to it, we stopped in at Chimera's bookshop, right? And they've got their own little bookshop and all the rest of it. And where we were staying was just a short walk from the Chimera bookstore. So we wandered down, and as we wandered down, we're in the Chimera bookstore and we're signing off some books and stuff. And I look out through the window, and here's this squirrel, a little red squirrel, running around outside, and he was gathering nuts for winter, so to speak. And I'm like, my wife, squirrels. And she was like, well, and so she was excited. I was excited. We look across at Andreas. Andreas is like, silly Australians. Why are they excited about us? Why, that's a species. Don't worry about that. It's like, but it's a squirrel. And so, like you say, right, you get super excited about this stuff that you're not used to seeing.
Oh yeah, even out here on the west coast, like Vancouver or the Lower Mainland, has a totally different like biome, and some of the stuff's the same. But like you go 4 hours inland to the Okanagan, where it's a semi-desert grassland, and you got badgers and stuff like that you don't see here. And what is it, pocket mice, and you're road cruising for the northern Pacific rattlesnakes and the gopher snakes and the rubber boas and the racers, and you see these mice just run across the road that are like so tiny, but like you're like, wow, that's definitely what those are eating.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh yeah, it's even interesting to see like herping in the Okanagan. You go out and then you go later at like midnight, and then you start seeing the spadefoot toads. It's been dry for the last month, and they come out super late, and they're just being dumb little toads just hopping on the middle of the road. You're like, wow, like there
Yeah.
must be some humid thing that happens that just that's like, oh yeah, it's now our time to start moving around again. It's
Something
hilarious.
tweaks, and it could be a beetle, or it could be an air pressure system change, or it could be some moisture get to
Oh
a
yeah,
certain point, or you never quite know exactly what it is that triggers it, but then suddenly tonight's the night for X, you know?
oh yeah, yeah. You see, there's what are the night jars or something like. I'm sure there's something similar in Australia where there's like weird bird things that blend into trees, and they'll
Mm-hmm.
you'll just see them on the side of the road, same as you'll see owls and stuff too. Yeah, and then
Yeah.
and when you road cruise late enough, you start getting a feeling for when certain things are out, like rubber boas. Like you go from dusk till 3 o'clock in the morning, and depending on where you are, and if you know there's a little water feature kind of near the road, you might get lucky even at 3 o'clock in the morning. They seem to like to drink water.
I don't think I've
Whether
ever
they're
heard of
coming.
anyone night driving in Canada. That's pretty cool.
Oh yeah. Well, in the Okanagan, it gets pretty hot there. Like all summer long, it's 30 to 35 degrees every day in the Okanagan. Yeah.
And a
Actually,
lot
that
of
and that.
places, it's freaking 30 plus degrees. Like I'm in Ottawa, and it still gets in the 30, 32, sometimes 40, and you put Humidex in there, and it's insane. Like, but it's only like
Oh,
for
last.
it's a 2 month period of summer, right? So it just doesn't
Yeah, okay.
last long. So,
Yeah.
Yeah, fair enough.
all right,
I don't know.
Michael. Oh,
Actually, yeah.
I was gonna say we're gonna have to close it out soon. So if you've got one last question or two, let's because I know that Scott's
No,
got to go soon.
no. I think that was a good way to end it there soon.
Perfect. Well, Scott,
Sounds good.
listen, a huge thank you for donating your time. I'd love to have you back on, maybe with Ty next time, maybe in at episode 50 or 100, whenever we get there. It'd be great if we get there and don't quit. But thank you very much for your time. If anybody wants to get a hold of you, chat, or if you have any Australian animals for sale, I'm not quite sure if you're down there. How do people get a hold of you?
Best way to get us is either on Facebook or on Instagram. So Nature for You is our business page. The easiest way to get to either of us. Or our website, which is www.wildlifedemonstrations.com. That has our bookstore on it as well. So if people are after signed books or anything like that, then we happily can ship them out. The exception is the US at the moment. We don't know how we can ship to the US, so that is a problem at the moment with regards to tariffs and stuff. But once that gets all sorted out, then we'll be shipping to the US again. So, yeah. Other than that, thanks very much for having us on. And if you want to listen to more of us, feel free to jump onto the Cold Blooded Contributions podcast and have a listen there. We've got backlog of episodes. We're going to start doing some episodes again soon. So, yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, it's a great show. I've listened to a good amount. Michael, anything else to say before I close it out?
Just after the show, we might have you either leave the computer on, or
Yeah.
I have a link for you to, you can just pop on like later today or something, and it'll automatically upload. You're just slightly
I'll listen.
behind, but it'll be fine.
So
It'll be
basically,
all good. I'll leave it calm.
yeah, just leave it on if you can for like 5-10 minutes. It should be enough. So for everybody, thank you very much for logging on. For if you want to reach Michael Gillian on Facebook, myself, Dominic Cavano on Facebook, or domsreptiles.com or domsreptiles on Instagram. Also, there's Reptiles Rejects. Please click those little buttons, the like button, the subscribe, all that kind of stuff. We appreciate it. And one last reminder, if you're just hearing this, go to the Reptile Expo, the Canadian Reptile Breeders Expo. It is going on this weekend, which will be the 13th and 14th. And to everybody, thank you very much for logging on. Scott, thanks a lot for your time. Appreciate it. You're a genius, and we appreciate having you on. And have a good night, everybody.